Gamer Gab.
Go!
Welcome back to Gamer Gab. It's Ashton and Wayne.
And today we have a very special guest, fellow Conway Corp employee and game enthusiast, Toby Hibbs. Toby, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here.
So I hear that you have a pretty impressive collection. Can you tell us how'd you get started and what's included in your collection?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have gamed since I was little kid. Got my first Super Nintendo and Super Mario World when I was 4 years old. But I never really thought of myself as a game collector until about 3 years ago, actually right around when I started working for Conway Corp. I had a little of that extra expendable income.
It's dangerous.
It is.
Worked in retail for a long time before Conway Corp. First Black Friday off of work, I woke up at 4 a.m. anyway and was just sitting on the couch and got a Scott the Woz video recommended to me on YouTube. Checked that out, liked it, started watching a little bit of his content. And he talked a lot about preserving the history of video games as a medium and as an art form, and the fact that he felt like they weren't nearly as well preserved as other art mediums, even though they absolutely deserve to be. Mm-hmm. And that just kind of lit a spark, and I kind of went a little nuts. I've got that extremist personality where I will just go at something 110% as soon as I decide to do it. So I started collecting and ramping up and researching and looking more into the history and off to the races.
So is it old gaming memorabilia? What all's included in this?
I also try to stick mostly to the games themselves. There's so many different subsets of things to collect that I knew I had to narrow my focus a little bit. I also try to make it mostly things that I am at least nostalgic for or care about or am interested in the medium. So mostly the big three, Nintendo and Sony and Xbox, with a little bit of Sega Genesis since I had one of those as a kid. Don't really go into like the Dreamcast or a lot of the other Sega systems. Don't go as far back as like Atari or ColecoVision, and don't go into any of the really weird and niche stuff like the Virtual Boy. But any of those three's mainline consoles and Sega Genesis, trying to get as many of their good games, their most prolific titles, stuff that I'm genuinely interested in playing.
So cool. I think we all are a little bit of collectors
for sure.
ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we actually talked about this on a previous episode about how games are being lost. You know, there are a lot of titles, especially nowadays with the big push for digital-only releases and stuff, you know, and then so that in turn gets into making it more difficult to buy, you know, actual hard copies of games. I mean, where do you look specifically for maybe harder to find titles, or are you just trying to get your hands on everything you can?
Never pass up a good deal, so if I see a good game for a good price, I'm absolutely going to grab it, but I try to focus on the significant titles of a library, the ones that either really review great or I've heard have that kind of lost charm to them that you don't hear about them as much, but are really, really good games. I will often, or at the beginning of it, I would go through the libraries of each console, try to look for what the system exclusives were for that, and try to gather those, and target things that I thought were less likely to be re-released on modern hardware. There's kind of a magic to being able to play the original game on the original hardware and the way it was intended, but I'm really not afraid of emulation or anything like that, especially in the form of like collections. I love it when a good collection comes out and you're able to get a whole bunch of old games together at one time, just as long as it's playable, as long as it's accessible.
This is interesting. Losing the tangible things. I mean, what would that mean as a collector of retro games, classic stuff? Because eventually this stuff is going to be classic.
Yeah. I feel like one of the great things about gamers as a community is we are very hardcore on preserving things from our nostalgia from the past. And so there are a lot of great outlets out there to do things to help with that. You know, people throw ROMs and emulations all the time and make different versions of ways to play things. But also, like for me, finding complete games, very difficult, very expensive. But there are really, really awesome sites like the Cover Project where folks have just uploaded hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cover art for games, and you can print them off. So I will very often get a disc only or cartridge only of something, and then just get a shell, print a cover, and get it on the shelf.
That's awesome. I didn't
That's
even think
awesome.
about that.
You used to get like a poster.
Yeah.
You used to get all sorts of stuff, and now it's like, well, here's your digital code, and even if you can go get the hard copy now, it's just got a code for you to go onto the store and plug that in too.
Yeah, man, the digital only physical release, that is one of the weirdest things in modern
For the same
gaming.
price.
Yeah.
For the same price.
But they're really tapping into us because we like to have our physical media, and I'm guilty of it in a weird way where if I have a game that is like $300 on its console but it's $20 on a digital storefront and I can buy that game digitally, I will still like get a shell, print a cover, and put it on a shelf just because that's my physical library. That's my list of everything I've got.
Yeah.
So when you're out, like if you're out somewhere at a game store or something, I mean, you've got such a huge collection now. Like, is it hard? Do you find yourself buying titles that you already have just because you forget you had that one, or do you keep like a list in your phone that you can just be like, let me check and see if I've got that one on the shelf?
I've had one or two flubs, but I did compile a full list at one point, so I can usually go through that and just get on Google Docs and do a find and check and make sure I don't already have it sometimes. Usually it's not such an enormous collection that I don't have a good conscious awareness of most of the games, but there are definitely those moments. I bought Dark Souls 3 twice. There's one Wii U game was like, because the Wii U is the only one that I'm going for the full set just because it's such a small library.
Yeah.
And I got two of like Snoopy's Big Adventure or something like that. Something that you don't think about.
Yeah.
So, could you tell me right now how many games you have?
Within a certain margin of error, about 1,150 games in the collection at the moment.
Wow, and that's just games. That doesn't include the controllers. I was looking at the photos you sent me, and I know you've got some like special edition. It looked like you had a Super Nintendo controller still in the box. Did I see that right?
So that's one of the Switch Online ones.
Oh, okay.
In Nintendo, when they did all the Switch Online, they uploaded all the retro games. They made original style compatible controllers, wireless controllers for those.
Okay, all right.
That's cool.
It's cool. I geek out for all the little tiny touches that are added to things. Switch Online, you get onto the Super Nintendo section and you use that Super Nintendo Switch controller. It changes the sound effects when you're going through the menus to like Super Mario World and original Super Nintendo sound effects, just as a little nod.
Really, that's cool.
I love
That
those
is.
little
That's
nods.
neat. Okay, so out of your whole collection, say top 3, top 5 favorite items in your collection.
Top 5 in the collection. Well, my favorite game of all time is Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door on the GameCube. So I've got a physical copy of that. That is very precious to me. It's one I've got it's the only thing that I have like a shrine for where I've got a Japanese copy of it, and I've got a poster for it and things like that.
Oh, that's so cool.
I've got a complete in-box Super Nintendo that I found at a flea market for like $30 several years ago.
Wow.
So that was a really cool one to get. I don't know if it's fair to lump this all into one item, but the Switch Pro controllers, they have a lot of really unique designs I liked a lot, and there weren't that many of them, so I decided I was going to go ahead and go for the full set of those. So I have an over-the-top 8 Switch Pro controllers, but they're all such interesting designs that I just had to go for all of them.
Nice. That's impressive.
Yeah, that is impressive. So you're married, right? You told me off camera you've been married about 10 years.
Yes, sir.
What does your wife think of your collection? Is she in on it with you, or is this just like one of those things that she's like, well, I love him, so I guess I have to put up with this? Like, how does she feel about it?
No, she is a huge nerd in a lot of different ways with me. She is not as much of a gamer, though she's got the titles that she's about. She's a lot more into the more mellow titles, Flower and Journey. What was it? Abzu is one of the more recent ones on the PS4 that she really, really enjoyed.
Sure.
Did she get on the Animal Crossing wagon?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. That was
Saw that one coming.
a first day purchase.
Oh, my wife did too. Yeah.
I think I did too.
But we're also both big collectors. She collects books and manga a lot more than I do, and I collect games. And so in our library, we've got the video game side and then the actual library side, all worked out well in there. We grew up together. Like when we were little kids, she would watch me play Donkey Kong, and she enjoys watching games. She's also a really great really incredible set of eyes to have when you're playing games, because she picks up on those things that you miss. And so anything I miss, especially in games like Skyrim where there's a million things to collect, it's like, that was Nightshade. Oh, Taproot, go get that.
We're really good at noticing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. My wife doesn't really game, but every once in a while I'll drag her into one of those couch co-op games, and that she really hates. She just plays it just because I want her to play it, because she's not good with the controller. She spends half the time like running around in the corner looking up at the ceiling or something. But she likes to make choices, and so anytime we're playing a game that's got some weighty choices to it, some big moral dilemmas, she likes to get in and help me make those choices. And it definitely makes it a lot of fun, because I think that especially in relationships, and you see it a lot more nowadays, I think gamers really get sort of a bad rap in a relationship setting, because people automatically assume that, oh, it's a red flag if, a guy likes to play video games, because that means he's not gonna have a job or and all of that stuff. And so it's really nice when you have a partner that can appreciate that stuff with you.
Absolutely.
And enjoy the stories with it, because the choices
sure.
are there too, but it's like also just the uniqueness that people are missing from the stories that are in games.
Yeah.
So you said Paper Mario was your favorite game of all time. What are some other games that have sort of left a mark on you?
So 1,000 Year Door, big favorite, really, really fun, really charming, a lot of really great comedy in that game. First love of my life was Super Mario World, one of the truly great platformers, something that I've probably played through about 300 some odd times in my life at this point. All of the Mario platformers were really, really good. Mario Odyssey was the first game I ever tried speedrunning in. I wasn't very good at it, but I did manage to learn a couple skips, and it was really my first time trying to enjoy a game in a very different way than maybe developer intended. Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess, top 2 Zelda games, absolutely fantastic. The open world of Breath of the Wild is really, really cool, but Twilight Princess, I think, has the best atmosphere and mood of any Zelda game. And then Cuphead, more recent title, but I played through that one with a buddy of mine, and it's way, way harder on co-op, no matter what they tell you. And it's just that animation style, the music, everything about it is so fun, so fascinating.
I'm picking up on the titles that you're saying, the ones that I do recognize, and they're really they have a calming vibe to them. And then you were talking about playing Elden Ring. And I'm like, Mario Odyssey, Zelda.
Very different vibe.
Yeah. I played Elden Ring briefly.
It's much more of a high stress situation than Paper Mario or.
Yeah.
So how did you find that? You said you told us off camera that Elden Ring was your first FromSoft title. What do you think about it so far?
Man, I really love it. It took me a couple of times going back to it to love it. The first time I played for about an hour and then put it down and didn't come back to it for a year. But it's one of those. When I got into collecting, I knew I wanted to venture into territories that I wouldn't normally go into otherwise. I wanted to experience and appreciate all of gaming to the best of my abilities. I'd never done a FromSoft game, had a lot of glowing reviews on that, so I really wanted to give it a fair shake. Plus, I mean, just looking at it, like the picturesque vistas, the places you go to in there are so artistically satisfying. The enemy design is so interesting, and it's got so many really cool, really crunchy mechanics that have ideas that I don't see in a lot of other places.
Yeah.
It took a little while to love it, but man, I'm really digging it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Toby, for coming on the show and telling us about your awesome collection.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So do you guys collect too? Let us know in the comments or send us an email with a photo of your collection to gamergab@conwaycorp.com, and we'll see you next time.
Gamer Gab.